Yes, friends, in this episode, we will see how to distribute multiple objects or a single object across our terrain using the painting method. In our previous lesson, we saw how to add objects one by one to the tree scene. However, if our terrain is large, adding them one by one, like this, can be a bit of a problem. We need to speed this up and diversify it. The populate section below, look, there is a populate section. When you come to the populate section, friends, you click on it. A menu will appear here. It says place, placement. Here is the part where we will place, and in the place section, this paint part, friends, is with the painting method. With this painting method, we will place the characters and objects that come to the tip of the mouse onto our scene by painting them. Look here. It says a dragon model here to start painting. So here when we drag and drop any object here, it now comes to the tip of our brush. And here, by adjusting the settings, we can paint this just like how you paint a picture, friends. We can place our trees here using the painting method. Look, I went to the trees section. Here I dragged and dropped the pine tree that we downloaded from below. I drag it from here, I drop it here, wait and release it, friends. Look, there are various trees. From them, this won't work. I say open a different one soon. It could be a more forest-like tree. It could be the trees we downloaded. Look, what's there? These have just arrived. Let's try dragging and dropping from our pine trees. Friends, like these. Let's imagine that our famous 4 trees are here, and I want to paint this part. The first thing I want to do, friends, the length of the brush covers an area of 10 meters. The tip of this brush is 10 meters. Is this measurement important? Well, part of it is important, part of it is not actually the important part right now. Where will it go when I just paint? Look, do you see? In this way, I press quickly and make adjustments as if painting. Friends, look, I saw it like this. I clicked here once, and for example, I performed such an operation. As you can see now, if these trees are large, when I click on the tree, friends, there is an age section here. Look, for example, this goes as the first variation, second, third, fourth, and so on. When I come to the first variation, I can shrink the tree like this. I came to the second, shrank it again, and came to the third, shrank it again. Because being this large disrupts the atmosphere. Actually, I came a little like this and left it. Did you see? I said trees, and it became an expression like this, friends. Look, when I look like this, the back part is a bit more closed, as you can see. In the same way, I can do this to the rock parts here. Friends, I can create another skater with the skater and do it on the rock parts there. Look, let's do that too. I came to this ticket part. The last settings I made came up again. I turned back to rock. Let's see what's here. Is there a rock? Not here. I came to the rock part. Look. This was the big rock. I won't take that one. For example, I took this one and placed it here. Then I placed this one, friends. Let me take this and place it here. Let me place this one here. Look, did you see? Let's also reduce the brush tip size. Let's see how it looks. Look, let's come from the parts we haven't done like this. Let's reduce the brush tip size even more. Look, do you see? If these look big to you, look, for example, I filled the rocks along this coastline here. But what happened? It looks very big. Did you see? Very big. There's a gigantic image, friends. The same situation applies here. Look, I came here. Now, the intensity like this, reducing it like this. Here, there's intensity reduction. So instead of reducing the size here, we can reduce the intensity a bit more. A process like this. If you want to delete it again, you can delete it again. With the brush tip, again, look, using this painting method again from here, I can fill these areas again. Just like this, friends. A process like this. This process is also applicable for other plants and diversification. Now shortly, we will do a different kind of diversification, look like this. By enlarging this a bit more, we ensure it becomes a different process, according to the brush size. For example, let's say these are too much. I took the eraser, I erased these. As you can see, friends, a situation like this, look, when I look like this, we have a building in the part of the river flowing through the rocks. When I look like this, see, scene navigation is important for this reason. When you look at each different angle of every scene, there is a different ambiance, as you can see. And you can close the back. We will place pairs. We will come to those parts. Friends, when we come to this part, we will do all of it. Now, for example, let's look from above. See, let's look from above like this. The part of my land that is a bit more of the wild nature, I want to do it here. Again, it might not fit here. Let's look from this part. This is not it either. This section might work. There is a bit more here. You know, plant, grass, there are slightly larger plants. I can use them. I came back to the populate section. Look, the paint part is active in the brush section. For example, let's say this comes here. I will paint this just as an example. What else is there like this? Let it come. Then, since these are all used for the forest, you can drag and drop them. What else is there? There's this, look, a bit larger cross, you know, the threaded ones, a bit larger varieties. You can use them. There are many varieties here, friends. When we use them, we'll get a nice appearance. Let's leave this one too. How will it look? I'm enlarging it a bit. Since I'm seeing the area from above, paint it a bit differently, paint it. Look, did you see? A bit more like a forest atmosphere. You know, as if you've gone to the forest. We'll paint this area in a different atmosphere, like a forest atmosphere. Friends, as you can see, you paint the empty areas like this. This is our task. I continue painting like this. Look. I continue like this. In the painting parts, look, it leaves a mark by itself. The areas it has painted, continue painting like this. If you want to reduce the brush size a bit and enter narrower areas, do it like this. And if you want to paint the bottom parts of the rocks, it creates a nicer appearance. Look like this. And as if there is some landscaping under the building, let's reduce it a bit more, like this. For the highlighted parts, let's do it like this. Look, since it reached the concrete here, there can't be plants on concrete. You need to erase it immediately like this. Yes, we did it like this. I came like this. I did the in-between parts like this. Well, look what happened. It also did it here. I immediately correct those parts with an eraser. I'm erasing. Since it paints everywhere, it can also paint unwanted beauties. Let it stay like this. For example, let's look like this. We continue painting in this way. Of course, there are many plants in the plant library. Banenz, Deutschland. Very different situations. You can create, friends, a lot. Since I'm only showing you how to use these in the lesson, there are very different situations. There are plants. By using them, you can create more diverse and richer terrains. The terrains I used are various plants used in the forest, between forests. Friends, I am using them. Look, I can increase the density from here if you want. For example, I painted and I say let the density increase thoroughly. For example, I am increasing the density a bit more from here to close the gaps. As you can see these. It becomes denser this way. Look, you also have the option here. If you want to show some plant bugs, larger, as you can see. You can adjust it from here, or this. Look, like this. You can also use the technique of painting one by one. How does that work? A single variation is created for a single plant. Look, there are parts here that I have painted. The part called panic is the painting sections. By closing their view, look, did you see? You can do only what you want to see. For example, if you don't want the trees to be visible, do you see? With this kind of painting method, I can immediately preserve the remaining parts. In terms of naturalness, I had circled around the tree so that the parts under the tree don't make the grass look too much. But this is how a process would be. For example, if you want to be a single color, you can choose it alone, like this. A process like this. Let's make this a bit smaller and continue the painting method in between like this. Creating a scene is actually a very enjoyable task, friends. Let's do it like this. You can also do it by holding down. In between, you can create your own painting realizations. I am opening the scene to the eye of the viewer. I press the right button and exit it. From the menu, friends, when we look, you see your scene was very empty at first. Now you see it. Looks like it has turned into a forest landscape. As you can see, it's like you're walking calmly in the forest. When you come here, there might be a variety of plants in such a terrain. Even more plant channels quickly, friends. We can place different trees here and there. Here, a slightly different wire. How should I say, a bit more natural. A type of tree that was planted later can be used, friends, like wire leaves. Look, for example, something like this could be possible. For that, I'm coming back to the puppet section. Here, there's a search section again, an urban section. For instance, I placed a tree there like this. Then let's take a look. Also, look, there are fruit trees as well. This might also be newly arrived. Diversification is up to you, of course. I mean, because there is so much diversification, it's a bit important. Which tree you choose, friends. Look, I placed it here. It will wait a bit. Let's do a test with this, if you want. Let it throw this tree. Yes, it sent that one too. I'm enlarging this area a bit. Look, friends, a slightly different ambiance has formed. Did you see it over there? The moment and the trees changed, it was like a different kind of atmosphere was created, but right now, the small pine tree is just settled. Like this here. It somewhat resembles a poplar tree, it seems. Let's do it this way. I see it again. It could be here too, like this, a bit more in between. You'll notice that it doesn't throw some pots because there is a certain throwing situation. So there is a specific area and it doesn't throw outside of that area, friends. That's why. Look, it throws according to this density. You want it again. It's like you have a small opportunity for this, bigger. As you can see, the other side turned into a tree that was planted later. Let's do it like this. Let's throw different types of plant revival here again, friends. Not from here, but it downloaded therapeutics. I'm throwing grass from the start. I'm throwing a bit larger grass, friends. Like this. It can increase the density. Here, I'm painting. Everywhere here. If you want, you can change the ground later, friends. I had chosen such a ground. Different types of grass can be added among these grasses. Here, if you want, you can change the ground later. Friends, look, I had chosen a different ground. Different types of grass can be added among the grasses. Look, different types of grass can be added among the grasses. There are different grasses here. They can be used. Just like this. as you can see. For example, when you take a look from here, a beautiful view will greet you. In fact, by pressing the render button, we can achieve a slightly different effect. For example, when I press the render button, as you can see, both the shadows, the flow there, and the image become more vibrant, friends, as you can see. The render is finished. Look, we are faced with such an image. So of course, the image here looks a bit more matte. But of course, due to the settings here, we will see those settings in the future. Our current situation is really nice. You can create different scenes. As I said, there are many different objects in the library. In the next section, friends, we will see scene creation, because our scene is almost finished. In fact, you can do something like this. Look there. Could be a rock arrangement here with the rocks. A formation can be made as if there are rocks here, friends. Or there could be a pile of rocks here, or different piles. Of course, there's something. In the library section over there, in the Megascan library, friends, there are 3D assets here as well. For example, let's type rock here. There are various situations here too. This was the reason I showed these from the beginning, friends. There are many different rocks and objects here. Look, there are broken branches. For instance, they can be placed here. By assigning these, you can create very different effects here. These are nice things too. As I said, it's somewhat related to your usage. Friends, this work varies depending on your usage situation. You need to select the objects here and transfer them here. You need to use the textures, the materials, and the objects here. That's the situation. Look, there are many events. For example, let's download something like this here. For instance, let there be an old stone of a structure here. Let me give an example like this. For example, I took it and placed it here. Like this. I'm placing it here like this. I will rotate it with the rotate tool. Since it's in the ground, let's say I buried it in the soil like this. For example, let there be an event like this here, or if you want to create a stair-like situation, like this. For instance, like this. By placing a few copies of these, you can create a situation, as if there was a structure here before, and it remained here, friends, as you can see, like this. So diversifying, detailing. There are so many objects in the river. Using them is somewhat up to you. Look, like this. For instance, what did we say about the dropper tool here? When you select this, an event related to it comes here. Look, for example, you can add dirt on top of it from here. You can darken it a bit more. You can change its color here. I lowered it a bit like this. Operations can be done in this way. A lot of different ambiances have been provided, friends. Therefore, it's beneficial to work on these extensively. And the surprising zoing sound